now 7:03 p.m. Welcome, everyone. With that, if we could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and the Texas Pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Now we'll have, if anyone would like to make public comments, please sign up. I've got 3 folks right now for the public comments. First, we'll start with 2A, the non-agenda items. I've got 2 folks here. We'll start with Mr. John DeGomez.
Good evening, folks. You've heard from me before. I wanted to update you. First of all, I have 2 items. First of all, I'd like to update you as to the status of my well. As you all know, I'm 5 miles north of Lexington, west of the 77. And as you know from the past, that I've lost something like 40 feet in my well, and I consider myself very lucky compared to others who have wells that have gone dry. And recently, on I believe it was August 4th, I had Lost Pines. I had Javier from Lost Pines come out and gauge my well again, and I'm now it's coming to my realization that I'm losing a foot of water every month. And so I'm right now at 213 feet below ground level, and my pump is at 260. So I don't have much more to go. Or the water that is under my land is going somewhere, and I suspect that it's going to Vista Ridge. My second point that I want to bring up is there was an article in the Lexington Leader dated Thursday, August 3rd. Ms. Smith says that she's seen it, and I'm sure that others in the audience have seen it as well. The thing that is troubling to me is this is an article written by a gentleman by the name of Curtis Chubb, PhD, Milam County landowner, and the title of the article is "The Long Road to Help Lee County Well Owners." And the part of it that, well, the fact that Vista Ridge's hydrologists also warned that subsidence up to 3 feet could occur is one of the more negative impacts from all of this water being taken out of our county. In any event, that's troubling. However, the thing that just blew my mind was that he writes that on January 11th at a Post Oak board meeting, and I understand you're not Post Oak, and I will make sure that I will keep talking to Post Oak as they will let me until I'm put in restraints, maybe. Mr. Chubb notified, or Dr. Chubb notified the board that Vista Ridge had violated Post Oak Rule 8.8 since its water was being used in Atascosa County, and something that was confirmed by SAWS Vice President Andrea Breimer, which is not listed as a destination county on the transport permit, which means that Vista Ridge transport permit could be revoked. Now, the question that I have to all of you is, if they're taking our water out of the Simsboro or the Wilcox-Carrizo and they're shipping it somewhere where they're not supposed to be shipping it, who has standing to bring that to their attention and make them stop? Can I file a lawsuit? Can you guys file a lawsuit to stop the water being taken from our county? I think I've probably exceeded my 3 minutes. However, that's something that I would like you folks to address, if you would, please. Please don't take my, I mean, I've been accused of what was, one of them said that I'm over the top, or, in any event, I hope you all don't think that I'm, hammering you. There's somebody I need to know who I can hammer, though. Thank you so much for your patience.
Thank you, sir. Next is Mr. Don Hardy.
Good evening. I'm Don Hardy. I think y'all know I'm from Lee County. I want to share something third hand that Mike Orozco said. He told Nancy McKee, she told me, and now I'm telling y'all. But first I want to lead up to it with speaking about Vista Ridge, and I know that's Post Oak Savannah's problem, and they kind of dumped it on us. But Vista Ridge is the perfect example because Vista Ridge is causing unprecedented drawdowns in the Carrizo Aquifer in my area of Lee County. And it's kind of a glimpse of what we have to look forward to. I consider our own pumping problems from Gatehouse, Recharge, 4-Star, Mr. Turfgrass, which is an absolute waste of water, or the LCRA. But Mike's point is this. If these levels of pumping prove to be unsustainable, which they definitely will, we as landowners shouldn't be the ones to suffer the consequences. The Texas Water Code says that the water under my property is a vested property right, and the Texas Supreme Court has upheld that. So if commercial pumping proves to be unsustainable, we shouldn't be the ones that suffer the collateral damage of their business transactions. It's their business venture, and they should take the risk. Their permit should be curtailed or even completely rescinded. As for the Aquifer Conservancy Program, I don't want to be paid a measly few $100s so that I won't sell to water purveyors. I want my water. And as Linda Curtis put it a while back, she said, if you have the right to sell your water, I should have an equal right to keep mine. And that's a really good point. Our area is like the Great Gold Rush, and everyone wants our water, and there's only two things that can happen. We're going to crash and burn, where this part of Texas is going to be terribly impacted as we watch our aquifer levels plummet, our springs dry up, and our creeks cease to flow, or we can limit and curtail permits for the sake of conservation. In my opinion, it's that simple. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else would like to comment on non-agenda items? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item 2B, the public comments for agenda items. I have one person signed up. That's Mr. Andy Weir.
Good evening, board members. I'm Andy Weir. I'm a landowner in Bastrop County. I have a well in the Simsboro formation of the Carrizo-Wilcox Aquifer, and I'm the executive director for the Simsboro Aquifer Water Defense Fund, SADEF. I wanted to speak to the minutes that I read in the board packet from the Financial Services Committee. And specifically, I wanted to address the potential of a mitigation program. I know the board is actively working on the rules for a mitigation program to be revived within the district. And in the board minutes from that committee meeting, they mentioned that because of the significant rise in costs, both the material costs and labor costs with mitigating a well or drilling a new well, that the committee discussed, are we going to have to look at cost sharing as part of the mitigation program in the future? And so I just wanted to speak to that. I wanted to note that when the mitigation was first begun, the board budgeted $500,000 towards that effort because that was the assessment of the probable number of wells that would need to be addressed. We know a little bit more about what wells need to be addressed. Now, you spent, someone can double check the numbers, but probably spent about $140,000 out of that fund mitigating wells before the program was stopped. Back in 2022, it was last year, right? And so I would like to suggest to the board, when you do discuss this in committee and eventually vote on the mitigation program, that you reinstate that balance of that $500,000 that was originally devoted to the mitigation program, and work with that amount of money and do the mitigation at 100%. I think what really is important is for the board to focus on very specific detail of what the board is willing to pay for, and that would be the supply pipe, the copper to get to that pump, the pump, or if you need to upsize the pump, and then the labor involved with that, because that's what you're looking at in terms of mitigation, and to focus on controlling those costs. And then you're not in a crisis mode right now. You have a good assessment of what wells need mitigation. You have money budgeted for that. And so we don't need to go into a crisis mode and say, oh, we got to do cost sharing. Then I would recommend that to really build out that decision about cost sharing, take within the next year or 2 years to do a good study that predicts what wells will need mitigation. And it might be wells like Mr. Gomez talked about. Mr. Gomez is talking about a Simsboro well that needs mitigation. But a proper study, we got great consultants that can identify the potential number of wells that need mitigation. Then you look at your finances. Perhaps there's a change in your revenue structure, and you can see what you can afford in terms of mitigation going forward. So I hope that you'll reinstate the program without cost sharing and use the money that you already dedicated for that. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else that would like to comment on agenda items?
I think my name's on the list somewhere. I don't know the difference between 1A or 2A or 2B or...
All right, that's fine, not a problem. Come on up.
I'm sorry. On the last one. Thank you. Thank you, board members. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Wallace Dehart. I live in the Fedor area, about 8 miles south of the church. And I had just a couple of questions and one comment, I guess. Questions on your agenda is that the Thomas Turf meeting is scheduled to meet in Elgin in September. But according to another note in your meeting, it says in Bastrop at the convention center. So my question is there a conflict there, or am I reading this wrong?
No, the correct date is the 20th. Correct. When we first discussed that, and that's in the governance committee meeting.
Yes, sir.
You are correct. It is written 27th that we discussed that, but it was decided against that.
Okay.
So it was decided against moving it to the 27th. So it will remain on this in Elgin on the 20th at 6 p.m.
All right, thank you. My second question is, in reading your literature, and I'm not sure what page it is because it wasn't noted, that under the well production report based on permitted volume, under Thomas Turf, July values, and I don't know what value this is 95,727. What is that? Under that category under July. under Thomas Turf pumping.
Mr. Totten?
Mr. DeHart, that's the thousands of gallons, is that number?
Thousands of gallons. And so for the year to date, it's 218,993.
So which comes up to 672 acre feet.
Okay, and then what is the dollar amount? When you get right down to it, what's the dollar amount that he pays for that 218,000 gallons?
By state law, that's the maximum of $1 per acre foot for agricultural use.
So what, I'm not very good at this, but what does that mean in dollars and cents?
So for that existing permit, the Simsboro well on the Page property, that's about $2,200 a year.
Okay, thank you. My other comment is that all my wells are dry, my creek's dry, my artesian water is dry, and I'm suffering out in that part of the country. The wildlife, I don't know what happened to it. It's gone. Ducks are gone. My fish are dead. Only thing I got left is some turtles and some snakes. But I'm gonna address that later on in September. But we're in a world of hurt out where we are, and something really has got to be done because our livestock can't survive this mud. Thank you very much for the opportunity, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
We can talk after the meeting.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Anyone else that would like to comment on agenda items that we have not gotten to? Anyone else? All right, not hearing anybody else, then we'll move on. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, item 3. The consent agenda items are routine, will be enacted by one motion unless there's a need to separate one of the items for separate discussion by a board director. Does any director have a need to separate out anything? All right, I don't have any.
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Hearing a second, all those in favor to accept the consent agenda, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, consent agenda passes unanimously. We'll move on then to agenda item number 4, the regular agenda, announcements. Any director, staff, anybody, any announcements? We're good? Okay. Then we'll move on to 4B, which is our presentation and update by our hydrologist consultants, LRE Water, regarding the Northeastern Lee County hydrology evaluation and the work that they've been doing.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to start off by apologizing tonight. We've got a brand new printer in the office. We couldn't figure out how to put ink in it, so I'm unable to provide y'all with paper handouts today. I will be providing Jim with the PDF copy, and he assured me if anyone wants a copy, he'll be able to provide that to you. If there are any points in today's presentation where you'd like me to zoom in or try to make something,
Hang on 1 second, Vince.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Totten, our card is full on this recorder. Is that anything that we need to change cards, or do we have a different recorder?
Let me see if I've got another card with me.
Yeah, we have another recorder here as a backup.
They want to swap,
Yeah.
maybe, recorders? No, I saw the recording light went off, and then when I hit the button, it says card
Put
full.
it more in the middle. Okay,
Okay,
all right.
thanks. Sorry to interrupt.
Pick back up where I left off. My name is Vince Claus, hydrogeologist, project manager with LRE Water. And today I'll be providing you our progress report update number 2 related to the development of our hydrogeologic model. Today's focus is really going to be on Northern Lee County, and the geology of Northern Lee County is really what we're going to be discussing today. This is getting us to the end goal of having a detailed hydrogeologic model that spans both counties, and we're going about this in a systematic way that allows us to build upon the work we're doing now to answer questions related to a potential Northern Lee County management zone area. We'll be taking this work down to Southern Bastrop County, over to southern Lee County and back over to northern Bastrop County as we zigzag our way throughout the GCD here. Today's focus will specifically be on that northern Lee County area though. I will not be back here for another 3 months, but at that point in time when I provide that presentation, we will have all the interpretations, all the stratigraphy sorted out for the entire county. So I just wanted to provide that update before I really got into it today here. And just a quick reminder, we provided this progress report, or this project outline at the beginning of the contract here related to the work we are going to be doing. What I have outlined on the red box on the bottom of the screen there is where we are today. We're at progress report number 2 in terms of those deliverables as they specifically relate to the hydrogeologic model. And then you'll notice over here on the left side of the screen, I just put geophysical log interpretations, because that's literally all we've been doing. We've been heads down, looking at those squiggly lines that tell us where the Carrizo is, where the Simsboro is, really trying to make sense of the geology, better understand what's been previously published in the literature, correlating a bunch of different data sets, making sure that we understand what has been said, what has been done, making sure that we're consistent with that prior research, but also sorting out some inconsistencies along the way, and that's something we'll take a look at today. So today's focus, I know it's a little hard to see on the screen right here, but we are really focused on this priority area number 1, and this priority area, and Jim, if you can help remind me, what's the roadway that we're bound against there on the southern side of Lee County?
21.
So we have 21 to the south, and then we have the Bastrop-Lee County boundary over there to the west side. That's priority area 1. That's where we've completed all the stratigraphy analysis. We're actually currently working down there in priority area number 2, which is everything south of 21 in Bastrop County. So we're nearly complete with that geology as well, but less relevant in terms of where we're going with today's discussion, how we're going to build upon the work in management zone 1, our priority area number 1 here, my apologies. So we reviewed the existing interpretations that were in the data. We've actually gone in and made interpretations on all the acquired logs. That's something we looked at a couple of months back in the presentation there. And once again, going about finalizing the geophysical logs in priority area number 2 is kind of where we are as a company right now. So just a quick reminder and a look at the hydrostratigraphy. What we have on the left side of the screen is the Geologic Atlas of Texas for northern Lee County. The one thing I wanted to point out, which you can see over on the right-hand side of the screen, is we're not looking at all the geologic units because we don't have all the geologic units. The way we have that layered system, there's certain units that we're not actually looking at in this portion of the GCD just because they don't exist. So those specific units that I'm referring to are going to be our Colorado River alluvium, but also the Yago-Jackson, the Cook Mountain. The Sparta is at land surface here, but because it's at land surface, we're not actually making a formation top pick for it because that's land surface. So we're really starting our work in this area at the Wedges and working our way all the way down to the base of the Wilcox there, which is the Midway group. So just a brief refresher. Last time I was up here, I was showing you all the data we had collected. What we're looking at again on this screen here is what that data looks like for northern Lee County. The orange dots are where we had data from an existing report. So this was an old brackish aquifer study report. This was an old GMA 12 report. This could have been the old groundwater, the GAM report for the Carrizo Wilcox. So there were a variety of places that we actually pulled data from. We aggregated all that together. We call that data harmonization. We kind of bring it all together, make sense of it, make sure we're cleaning up where we may have duplicate records. And as part of that, we actually found some inconsistencies, and that's what we'll spend the next couple slides looking at here through some cross sections. But in addition to taking a look at all those existing logs, we also took a look at all the acquired logs and made sure that all that data that we were able to get our hands on that was new data for the study area, we were actually going in and making geophysical log interpretations on. Yes?
Are most of the acquired logs oil and gas logs?
I would say nearly all of them are. We do have the public water supply wells and the large permit wells that we have incorporated throughout this process here. But I think we're talking a total of 42 for the entire GCD area. A lot of those actually have already been worked into a prior study. So there's only actually 12 of those that were actually new logs. So the majority would be oil and gas, whether that production or exploratory. So a little hard to see here, but we'll actually start on the right-hand side of the screen. This is just an example of what we call a type log. This is a geophysical log that's actually published, peer-reviewed. This is from a report by Ayers and Lewis in 1985. It's what the GAM report cites numerous times if you've read through that. It's actually one of the original studies on the area, very thoughtful, very meticulous in their geologic investigation, but also a regional investigation. So it doesn't provide that detail that's necessarily needed when we're talking about site specifics within, say, the Lexington area of northern Lee County. What we have on the left side of the screen are some cross sections that we're going to take a look at. So we're just looking at northern Lee County, and what we're going to take a look at is a series of 5 cross sections here where we actually correlate and tie those geophysical logs together. So I know it's hard to see, but the few things that I want you to point out on this are the difference between these black lines and these blue lines here. Where you get these divergence, this is actually where we had to go in and correct some interpretations. Where we see these blue lines diverging from the black lines, this is where we carefully looked at the log. We had 3 different sets of eyes on it, and we decided, hey, this just isn't right. We need to move this up or we need to move this down. And usually you can tell that there's a thickness issue associated with that formation unit to the log to the left and then the log to the right. For the most part, interpretations line up fairly well, but in this example here, we have this one section here, which is going to be the base of the Calvert Bluff, the top of the Simsboro, where we had to make a minor correction. We have this section down here where we made a minor correction. But for the most part, most of these blue lines and black lines are matching up. And what we're looking at is a cross section that runs from kind of central Lee County all the way up to northeastern, northern Lee County, kind of right where the Vista Ridge area is. So this is following that geology along the Milano fault structure. We have that fault structure that runs right through the middle of Lee County. This is following that axis there and showing us that a lot of the existing data was already, pretty well controlled in terms of how we're matching to that. What we have is another example here where we're actually a little bit further south, where we're closer to 21 down here in this log. Once again, the blue lines and black lines where they're separating, that's where we're getting a little bit of divergence. So the point I wanted to make here is, as we were going about making interpretations on all the logs we acquired, we actually realized we had to go back and we had to reinterpret everything. We had to go back and double check everything that has previously been published. And for the most part, things were good, things matched up. But every once in a while, we did find some inconsistencies in some of those interpretations. So what we've done is we've highlighted where some of those inconsistencies were. This may cause some sort of alarm or panic when I show you 2 examples where we're seeing some pretty dramatic inconsistencies, but we made sure to drive those cross sections through those areas just to highlight why this was important in terms of going back and reviewing all the existing data as well. Once again, we get a lot of blue and black lines that are consistent with one another, but every once in a while we get the divergence. Now we're going to look at a couple cross sections where we're actually following the dip. So this is following the aquifer systems as they're heading there towards the coast. Just a gentle slope as we're heading towards the coast over here, kind of closer to the Lee-Bastrop County line. This next cross section actually runs just north of Lexington here, and I believe Tanglewood's the nearby city or town. Correct me if I'm wrong. Hopefully I'm correct on that one there. So we're actually crossing over that graben structure, which is what we're seeing in this 3rd log here. This is where we get those faults that drop the formations down, forming that nice little graben. And this is what's on the map that pops up that I'm sure all of y'all have had your eyes on before, where it's 2 parallel faults where you get some of that younger geology that's popping up in the middle of the older geology. That's that graben structure right here. Once again, there's some divergence. This is probably our worst offender here. There's actually a fault here where we carefully looked at this and we realized we had some repeat sections occurring here, or where we actually had some missing sections occurring here, and we had to move the fault up a bit. Yes, sir.
That deviance that you're talking about right there, what does that cause with the groundwater and that type thing?
This dip right here, this is a graben structure, and what that means is we have faults where we've had downward movement of the formations, and those faults then sometimes create pathways for groundwater movement. And some of the prior discussions have been related to changes in water chemistry, changes in water temperature. Usually when you have structures like this and faults that are this dramatic, those provide conduits for some of those changes. Now, I'm not saying that that is the exact reason or that is the exact cause, but that is one of those possible explanations for what may be occurring in that area related to this fault structure here. Is we're actually getting movement of that artesian water at depth working its way upward through some of those pathways.
Yeah, because I'm in the middle of that, more or less.
Vince, isn't that compartmentalized also?
And so, and that's a good point. What Alan just asked is if this is compartmentalized. And when you look at the offsets from here, we have a pretty dramatic slope. And for example, when we look at the Simsboro formation, which is this formation right here, the second one down, and you look at the top of this formation, the top of the Simsboro on this log, the base of the Simsboro on this log, they're almost offset enough, or between these two logs they are offset enough to where there may be a compartmentalization of the aquifer occurring there where groundwater is being impeded in terms of that movement of flow as you come across that fault block. Now, if we have some other geophysical logs in between here, this may actually be more of a stair step. This makes it look very dramatic, one break in the fault plane there, but most likely this is a series of much smaller faults that when aggregated together create that larger offset. And there's quite a bit of published literature on these faults, and so that's stuff that actually we'll be providing to Bill. He'll be making those interpretations as he goes about developing the groundwater model. He'll have to make a decision. Is this a no-flow boundary? Is this leaky? Is there some water getting across it? So that's where all this information becomes really important for Bill as he goes about creating a custom groundwater model for the district if y'all decide to go that route.
Thank
And
you.
that's Dr. Hutchison who I'm referring to as
Thank you.
Bill. Yes, sir. Any other questions? And then this last one here, we're actually outside of that structure a bit. And what we're seeing is things kind of level off. We're not getting that dramatic downward protrusion. But then, once again, things start tapering back towards the Gulf Coast as we work our way further south. But we're pretty much right here along the county line on that far eastern Lee County boundary there. Once again, pointing out the blue lines and the black lines, pretty consistent over here. The one thing we noticed was closer we got over there to the Vista Ridge area, the county line, that's where things lined very well. It's as we were further south in the county, that's where we're noticing more of those inconsistencies in those interpretations. So what I have on the screen here is this is a depth to top of Simsboro surface right here. And I thought this was the best representation in terms of illustrating the point of how this fault structure is actually a nice control on the way this geology is down here. We have this big fault that pretty much lines up nicely to this break in this contour line. But then where we have that graben structure where we were just talking about, we actually see some unusual behaviors here related to the top of the Simsboro, which, once again, consistent with there being faults there. But we believe now with this detailed data that we have, we can better explain, better answer those questions as it relates to changes in temperature, changes in chemistry. We now better understand what that system actually looks like with this detailed look at the stratigraphy here. One thing I wanted to point out on this slide is this now opens the door and allows us to finish the review of the current Northern Lee groundwater management zone strategy that was proposed. We said we were going to look at 4 different criteria as part of that: water levels, the GAM results, pumping data, and the geology. Well, now that we understand the geology out here, we can be more confident in terms of what pumping data we're analyzing, making sure that pumping data is consistent to what aquifer or what zone we think it's associated with. We now can use that to inform the GAM models. There's ways to use this information, look at aquifer thicknesses, apply that to the hydraulic conductivity, which then correlates to transmissivity, which allows our GAM model runs to be a little bit more accurate there. But then also water levels. One thing we've talked about, as well as going dry, now that we have a better understanding of that geology, how deep it is to the top of the Simsboro, we can better understand, as water levels drop, where these wells are going to become semi-confined or unconfined in terms of those aquifer systems out there.
Hey Vince, explain the colors.
Oh, yes. My apologies. So out here, out west, in this very western edge, this is outside the outcrop area. But these darker colors are where we're actually shallow, so you may only have to drill 160 feet right up here. But just because you're drilling 160 feet doesn't mean you're going to get much water. But then as we're heading downward here, these dark colors turn to yellow, which turn to blue. And I believe the blue colors here, the deepest blue color is 2,500 feet. below land surface. So we're just making that nice gradient in 250-foot intervals, which is illustrating just how things are getting deeper, but also where we have this fault structure, that's where some unusual behaviors within the aquifer system exist. And specifically related to the geology, that is. So next steps, we're finalizing the stratigraphy for priority area number 2, so that's Bastrop County, South Highway 21 there. After we finish that, we're going to go to Zone 3 and Zone 4, which where that leaves us is by the next time I'm here for Progress Report 3, we'll have all the stratigraphy figured out for the entire county at that point in time. Once we get the stratigraphy figured out, we're going to go back to rebuilding the hydrogeologic model. We plugged in all the data last time I was here, provided a couple still screenshots of that model. We unfortunately didn't have enough time today to make an update with the new data we've acquired, but next time we are here, there will be an update of the 3D model. We'll actually go in and we'll look at this fault structure within that 3D model workspace. It still will be in draft format. We'll be pushing forward over the following 3 months to make sure that's finalized and in a spot that we're really happy and comfortable with what that geology actually looks like with respect to some of this faulting. But just wanted to provide and throw this out there that November 15th, I think that's when we're kind of targeting that Progress Report 3 update and when we should have all this stratigraphy wrapped up at that point in time. And that's it for me today. Be more than happy to answer any questions, address any concerns that the board may have here tonight. Yes, ma'am.
This is slightly off topic, but you said that your next area you're going to look at is southern Bastrop County?
And we're about 70, maybe 80% complete with that already. Yes, ma'am.
And can you tell me why that's an area of concern?
So working with Jim and the management committee, I believe we outlined a strategy instead of just going shotgun approach. There was a method to the madness, and I'm not sure exactly what that strategy was, why we went down to Bastrop, but maybe Jim could provide some insights there.
I keep being told there's something that's about to happen down there, but I just never know exactly what it is.
The Alliance Regional Water well field is about to come online, and the Guadalupe Blanco River Authority also has a well field.
Is that in Gonzales County?
They are both in Caldwell County, just within a mile or two of the county line again. So there's 2 big well fields that, granted, every time I've talked to Gonzales County who permitted those well fields, they're going to come online in 6 months. And I've heard that, I think, twice or 3 times now. But that will be the next place that, well field's going to come online. So we prioritized moving from North Lee County to South Bastrop County in developing this.
Do you know what kind of permit they have?
It's export permits. I don't recall the value, 20,000 maybe. I don't recall off the top of my head.
It's forecasted that there's going to be wells in Bastrop County that will be impacted adversely because of it. So that's why they prioritize that. Any other questions for Mr. Claus?
Thanks, Vince. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Vince.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Next up, agenda item 4C, discussion, consideration, and possible action on updated legislative representation services agreement between the district and Mr. Greg Ellis. Mr. Ellis, if you want to say a few words. So it's in your packet. You should have seen it. It's a 2-year contract. It expires, the current one expires at the end of this year. The current contract was a 2-year contract. It expires at the end of this year, and this new one is also a 2-year contract. It would start on January.
We're trying to match it to your fiscal year, and mainly coming up right now is we're working through your budget cycle to make sure you got the right numbers for the budget. This last session was a tough session, obviously. A lot of work had to be done. We got our bill passed, unfortunately vetoed by the governor for completely unrelated reasons. That's always a difficult pill to swallow. But we did a lot more work in addition to that. We had a lot of work on the LCRA bill, which went from a very bad bill to something not only we live with, but probably a fairly positive bill. We had some other things that came up this session, such as the provision that came up very late. The bill was out there in the House for a long time, crossed over to the Senate side. Very late in session, suddenly it was amended to include a provision that not only would you have to post your agendas on your website, you'd have to post all of the material that was presented to the board on the website. And we were able to work with the House and Senate sponsors to get them to take that off of there. It's not a bad idea to put materials that are provided by the staff and by your consultants on your website. That's fine. But they said all materials presented. So meaning anybody who sends anything to the board, whatever it is, would have to be posted on your website. And I gave them some pretty outlandish examples of things that we might have to post. A copy of the Quran, for example, or some other published material. And that might be a bad idea to have a law out there saying we have to put that up on our website. So that's just some examples of the kind of things that we have to work through during session. And really the only way that you can do that is to either have Jim up there watching what's going on, paying attention and up to answer questions from members, or you hire somebody, an outside consultant, to do so. I do want to point out that unlike a lot of other lobbyists, I don't have the type of a cachet or sway with members that I can call up and ask the chairman to hold a bill for a month, or I can call and ask the governor to veto a bill. That privilege is kind of left usually to ex-members. And there are some of those out there. If you want and need that type of representation, I've got a few names I can provide for you. I'm just not that type, but that's also why I don't bill what they bill. What I provide for you is expertise in this area, strong knowledge of the legislative process and the legislators themselves, and the ability to communicate that, I believe, effectively to the members. The last thing I want to mention is that this next session is probably going to be a little bit tougher just in terms of the contacts we have up there. Tracy King, the chairman of the House Natural Resources Committee, is retiring. Forrest Price, another longtime member of the committee, is retiring. You've seen several other retirements announced of some fairly longtime members, and so we're one way, whether we have the same speaker or not, we're going to have a different chairman of the House Natural Resources Committee, guaranteed. Which means during this interim, I'm going to have to start talking to all of the potential candidates for that job, people who we think might get that job, and start planting those seeds and making, building up those relationships and making sure that we have good connections there. And the bad part is when the chairman leaves, usually the staff goes with them. The staff is probably not going to continue to work for the House Natural Resources Committee. They may be at another committee, or the staff members might go off on their own and start their own lobby practice. You never know what they're going to do. So there are multiple relationships that are going to have to be developed during this interim, and that's another reason why I do these 2-year contracts, is it's not just being there during session. If you haven't done the work that you need to do well in advance, it's probably too late by the time you get there in January of every odd-numbered year. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions about the last legislative session or the upcoming one or this contract.
I just want to say thanks. Having you by my side at the Capitol was a pleasure. I felt confident, and it was great to work with you. You provided great advice, and I am very appreciative of the work that you did to help us with that bill this past year. It was a difficult haul, but we did a good job, and you did a great job, and I wanted to thank you for that.
I appreciate that very much, and I also want to say thank you to you, because I don't always have the ability to have a board member, board president come to Austin when I need him to be there. So your ability to go up there when you were needed was very helpful. I mean, they'll talk to me and they'll listen to me. They listen to you a whole lot more than they listen to me.
I think they listen to the public out there. There's several folks out there who were getting listened to, and I'm very appreciative of those folks out there.
And I was very, very pleased to have those folks helping out as well. Had good conversations with Linda, had good conversations with Andy, and it was helpful to have the people who are directly affected by this up there telling their stories. There's nothing stronger than that.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Ellis?
I would make a motion to approve Greg's new contract.
Second.
Hearing a motion and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Hearing none, the motion passes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your confidence.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
Next item on the agenda, 4D, discussion on draft rulemaking to update the district rules to reflect new laws from the last legislative session. So as you know, as Greg was mentioning, there were several bills that were water related. Natasha, could you state a few words about, I think there was 4 bills that we have draft rules for, and that was in your packet. And so the floor is yours, Natasha.
Thank you. So as you know, we're still working, but there were more than 4 bills filed, but there were 4 of which we determined we needed to do rulemaking for, to either make our rules reflect what was in the bill or just for consistency purposes. So the first one, House Bill 3059, you'll see on the page 1. We amended or proposing to amend the definition of export fee. So that bill, in addition to addressing mitigation, that bill allowed for a district to choose essentially whether or not it was going to impose an export fee based on this general law, which would be Chapter 36, or the district's special law. And so for our district, the special law, I guess, limits the export fee to a combined export and production fee cap. And so if this district were to want to take advantage of House Bill 3059, it would have to expressly select that option. So I'm calling it an opt-in, but if you have a choice. And so under 3059, the export fee caps out at 20 cents per 1,000 gallons without the combined production and export fee limitation. So moving down, Senate Bill 1746, but I'll go back to 3059. 3059 did, yes?
You meant to put export instead of expert, right?
Yes,
Does
there's
it
a
say
typo.
expert in there?
Twice it says
Yeah.
expert.
You know, yes, I was working with lots of experts when I was writing this. But yes, this is an initial draft. And so, of course, look at it, send me your comments, as well as, you know, the public has a copy of this too. They can send in comments, but they'll have an official opportunity to do so before the public hearing. So, another thing about 3059, I think everybody knows that the legislature expanded the use of fees provision to allow funds to be used to essentially maintain operability of wells that have been significantly affected or impacted by groundwater production. And so that's the language that we're still working on. Jumping down to 1746, the legislature added another exemption. And so since our rules essentially track the exempt wells in the statute, we've added the exemption for temporary rig supply well for groundwater production. And that language is essentially, it mirrors the other temporary exemption we have. So then we have procedures for petitions for rulemaking. And so the legislature put kind of like a loose framework for persons with real property interests in the district to ask the district to undergo a rulemaking. And the statute says that, you know, the district has to develop rules for the process and procedure for this. It allows pretty broad, you know, authority for the rulemaking development, but this process does have to be scripted out by rule before you begin to accept these petitions. This one, I think, has a deadline. What we've drafted here is almost a copy of what the Texas Alliance of Groundwater Districts had proposed, and so you can read through that. But essentially the petition would need to explain what they're asking for, you know, submit essentially a draft rule or text of a proposed rule. And then the GM would actually go through a process of reviewing the petition to make sure that it met kind of the threshold to be submitted, and then sending it on to the board and recommending a rulemaking. Let's see. House Bill 1791, that amends the district's process for taking action on a proposal for decision that comes out of the State Office of Administrative Hearings. I think we've heard a lot from Greg about that, so I won't get into too much detail there. But essentially, the board would have 180 days to act on that PFD. If the board, for some reason, fails to act on the PFD would become the board's final decision. There are also some other changes, procedural changes with that bill related to your considerations of those SOA PFDs. And then similarly, there's changes to the rehearing process, request for rehearing process, and exhaustion of remedies if anybody were to seek to sue the district or appeal a district's decision. House Bill 1791 also changes that process. So I think overall these changes mostly process related. The petition, the rulemaking petition is kind of a new thing, but that's what's before you. So send me your comments. Do you have any questions?
I just wanted to state that we'd like to have just one further hearing. So these will require a public hearing.
Correct.
In order to pass.
Right.
We'd like to have one hearing to cover them all.
Yes.
And right now, I was hoping to have the hearing in September, but right now we're not ready yet.
Yep.
So unfortunately, we're not going to be able to have a hearing in September, but October is the next time where I'm hoping we can get the next hearing to get all of these addressed and the rules.
Ideally, I mean, there are a lot of irons in the fire. I mean, I could go through permit names, but the district has a lot on its plate as far as litigation goes.
What's the lead time on publishing notice before the hearing?
So the rules say that you have to publish 20 days out, but our newspapers that we publish through, they require a 10-day lead time. So Peggy has to get the notice to the newspaper 30 days out.
Right, so in order to meet September, we would have to have everything ready in 4 days to go out to the newspaper by August 20th. And we just were not ready in 4 days to have everything done in 4 days from now. So there's, in essence, 30 days advance notice that we have to have everything prepped and ready before we can go to the newspapers. And so that lead time is driving a lot of this.
Right.
Yeah. Due process. All right.
So with that, I would like to quickly enter into a short executive session on this item. So I'd like to recess into executive session to consult with our attorneys regarding this posted matter on regular agenda item 4D, the discussion on the draft rulemaking to update the district rules to reflect new laws from the last legislative session. And the board may seek the advice of our attorneys under Government Code 551.071 for any action on the agenda for which a closed session is permitted by law, and then we'll reconvene. So at 7:57, I'd like to recess at this time, and we'll go in that back room. Should be a short session, I'm hoping.
I sent you the application.
Oh, great.
So you should have it when you get home.
Okay.
That one time with Joe Mars, Doug Mars,
Looks like
Okay. I know how we do it. Yeah, I'm just not thinking one piece of land. This one thing one thing well. I can do it. I'll bring it. Yeah. I know I can do it. There's a reason I have that rig to do it easy. No, there's a reason I have that rig to do it easy. I didn't bug you. I only didn't get one job done today. I believe he's got your buzz.
I know it's causing. Why is certain
Give a small right.
No.
Yes, yellowy.
I didn't want to catch you.
I'm getting in deeper as I go.
This house or second side.
You're kind of sludge.
One sticking around. I don't know how to do it. But then I don't know you have to treat above it.
This front flow is controlled. Because
I've never done technology.
but it sometimes it puts you in
I better turn the phone off. I thought I had pretty much hit any button on the side. I had it turned that
not cold, but cool. And it's got a small tool. It's higher So the question is,
when you look at spray drains, you got two systems. Shallow system. So this one has where you see it's more of a shallow system.
It's called Worst case,
If we can't understand that,
is that rig running all day long?
I can't tell.
It's one of those things, just because I can, doesn't mean.
When Josh was storage. That's what you have to spring.
It's dry, it's dry.
That's why
I have all the equipment I have, because I don't have to do it that way. I'll set Paul, I gotta set up, I need to set Paul. Because I can do that in 2 years. I don't ever have to hold it or make that direct. I got 4 8 pipes. Or we're gonna get into like 2. Then I'd like to run Doing good. At least a year and a half out. No, his dad was
No way to tell.
Yeah, I like that also.
So you know all about it.
Everyone has them out there. What's likely to here? No. Yeah, I don't think those guys are fantastic too.
You gotta mow it, you have to mow
Assume they are then. Right, exactly.
Hey, I couldn't get one. I have this thing on
My question though, was it said this is violating Who was that? Oh, wait, one of these meetings? Yeah, I do remember talking to you. Oh, I remember that's great. I remember that. They don't work within the community. They're real people. They're afraid of them back there. So, I mean, I gave up drugs, long before you were born. I started as a young man. My dad was an aviator. Well, I'm not here to change. Not here to change. So did you ever see that movie by Teen Warner? Well, she came to that movie. Somebody came along and straightened me out. Well, let me
Yes, I am. Yeah, Sean,
I was
hoping we'd be through by now.
Huh?
I was hoping we'd be done early by now.
I thought we'd be done early too.
That's what my husband says. You're going to be really late tonight like last time. And I said, I hope not. I said, it should be short. I said, but you never know with this group.
Sure do.
We have turned back on. Uh-oh. You probably heard Melissa and I gossiping in there.
I'll try and edit it.
It was nothing bad. Huh?
Deal on the go next week. Black and beautiful.
Thank you. All right, thanks everyone. Thank you for your patience. We'll get back started now. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sherrill.
A new officer.
Thanks everyone. We'll reconvene here at 8:19. No votes were taken during the executive session, and we'll pick up back the agenda again. It was 8:19. Next item on the agenda are the committee reports. So item 4E on the regular agenda, committee reports. We will start with the Financial Services Committee. Being that Mr. Semang is not here, Mr. Totten, could you give that update?
Yes, sir. I can run through it if Kay will back me up. I kind of felt like I was going to be thrown under the bus with everybody from the Financial Committee going on vacation before this meeting, but I appreciate Kay coming back for this.
I'll be your backup singer.
The Financial Service Committee met, and the main purpose was to evaluate the mitigation plan from a financial perspective, which was challenging since we hadn't seen the rules or the policies associated with that program yet, which I think immediately put the Financial Service Committee on kind of conservative footing, which led to some of these suggestions about cost sharing and annual caps, because, again, they were trying to develop the financial structure for this without knowing what the regulatory side would look like. The comments were supplied to y'all with the packet. It basically came down to, they made recommendations of setting fixed percentages on an annual basis for expenditures. It recommended evaluating cost sharing given the unknown costs that would be associated once this program went district-wide. Again, that was kind of conservative footing that they were trying to take. Did recommend that we take the opportunity that to bring wells that may have been previously non-compliant in terms of productive rate into compliance with district rules and state law. So capping any well at 17.5 gallons per minute, which is 25,000 gallons per day. And then also recommended taking up and considering the possibility of evaluating in the future whether or not mitigation programs should also include water quality as a consideration, or as long as the water is fit to the purpose of what was drilled for, should the district just let that go. But those were the recommendations that the Financial Committee relayed to Management Committee during their evaluation. And we'll be meeting again now that there's some more structure to the program. Hopefully we can start trying to match up numbers between the recommendations from management with the budgeting process for the district.
Thank you. Any questions on that? All right, moving on then. The Governance Committee. The Governance Committee met by Zoom on August 2nd, 9 a.m. Attending were myself, Kay Rogers, Michael Semang, Natasha Martin, and James Totten. The committee discussed the Gatehouse litigation. We discussed the July stakeholder meeting. The next meeting is on August 24th at the Giddings Public Library. Thereafter, the meetings will be held at the LCRA Bastrop South Shore. Dr. Votler's monthly, the summary from that meeting was distributed, a hard copy. Everyone should have received one here today. That's Dr. Votler's summary of the first meeting. And moving forward, hopefully we'll try to get them into the packet if we can get them in time. If not, we'll have hard copies at the board meeting. We discussed the Greg Ellis contract, which we just approved. We discussed the general manager had gone to perform some site visits. We discussed those. I believe Mr. Totten will talk about that in greater detail during his GM report. We discussed the new Giddings office and starting some of the outside projects. Now that the inside is starting to kind of finish up. It's looking like we might be able to move there maybe towards the end of next month, towards the end of September, hopefully. Maybe, that's what we're thinking. But that's always subject to change. The committee discussed these new legislative rules that were in your packet. Again, we had the goal. My goal was to have a rules meeting at the September board meeting, but unfortunately, we're just not there. We tried our best, but it's looking like the rules meeting for the new legislative-based rules is probably going to be more like October. We just could not get it done in time with the 30-day notice for the newspapers. So we confirmed the LRE water presentation for today. We also discussed the Federal Bureau of Reclamation. There's a new Water Smart grant program that came to our attention that finally came out to the public, and Mr. Totten is working to update the documentation and the application. He's worked with LRE Water to look at the scope of the funding of this grant. They're looking at getting a more detailed GAM, our model for our region, one that could work with the regional GAM, and the new project is estimated to be about $300,000. The grant will allow up to a 50-50 split. And the due date is October 17th. So we've got about 6 weeks or so until we have to submit that. Mr. Totten is updating documentation, working with Dr. Hutchinson to get the proposal defined, and then we'll review it and update that and move forward. So our plans are to apply for that federal grant. We talked about the Aquifer Conservation Program. We've directed our legal counsel to proceed investigating how to propose how to implement that program. So we're starting to look into it from a legal perspective, and then we'll start there with Natasha and our legal counsel giving us some recommendations and guidelines on how to best implement that program. So let's just start. It's a work that's starting, and it'll be in progress here. We discussed the creation of emails for directors. We also discussed now we may need possibly a tool or rules to track water leases. Now that our rules have to deal with leases, so we may want something regarding leases, a more robust lease notification process. And then finally, let me apologize for the incorrect date. I guess I missed. This is on me. I missed the back of the page when I was updating this. It says that the committee discussed Thomas Turfgrass, Aqua, and Manville hearings for all being planned for the 27th at the Convention Center. We did discuss that, but we decided against it, at least for Thomas Turfgrass. For Thomas Turfgrass, for sure, the next hearing is on the 20th of September at 6 p.m. in Elgin, as was noticed, and I stated that publicly last meeting. That's a done deal. So Thomas Turfgrass is on the 20th of September, 6 p.m. in Elgin. The Aqua and Manville permits, really, those permit hearings are still to be determined. They may be on the 27th on the Convention Center, but they may be pushed into October. So they're right now, again, these notes were written up two weeks ago, so things change over time. So the Aqua and the Manville hearings are to be determined. It may be the 27th, but that's not finalized. The Thomas Turfgrass is finalized. That's September 20th, 6 p.m. in Elgin at the Chamber of Commerce there. And that's the continuation of the hearing from last month.
I think that's the library.
Yeah, it's the library civics chamber of,
Oh, okay.
that's next door to the library.
Okay.
Yep. And then the committee planned and discussed the items for this August board meeting. Any questions? All right, next committee, Infrastructure Committee, Mr. Herb Cook. Any update on the Giddings office?
We're making progress. The air conditioning ducts have been installed. The electricians have been working in there. I think there's some lighting. I haven't seen that yet, but I was told that the LED lights are in, the ceiling grid is in. They've done some preliminary work outside with the concrete for a handicapped access, and the handicap doors are in. And that's about it for this time that I can think of offhand, but it is progressing.
Yeah, I took a look at it today. Looking good. The room, that space looks bigger than I thought. I went there and I took a look at that meeting room, and it actually looked a little bigger than I was expecting. So I was pleasantly surprised by that. Any questions on that report? All right, moving on. Education and Outreach Committee.
The Education Outreach Committee will be meeting tomorrow, but since our last board meeting, Jim Totten and I have met with education community outreach people from San Antonio Water System to put together a video poster K-12 contest with Lexington 5th grade and high schools and the equivalent from San Antonio. So they've got, SAWS has a lot of really good educational materials and some really good ideas for the contest, and there'll be lots of awards associated with that. So we're looking forward to the next meeting and nailing down some of the specifics of the program.
Great, thanks. Management Committee, Director Smith.
Okay. The Management Committee met on July 27th, and we also met again yesterday. At both meetings, we were discussing the rule revisions, additions, giving feedback to Ms. Martin. Yesterday, we focused primarily on the mitigation rule, and we discussed whether the cost sharing should go forward. We felt that because we intend to have very strict criteria, that would not be necessary, but that has to be hammered out going forward. We also discussed the stakeholder recommendations from last fall from the Lee County Carrizo stakeholder group, and hoping to keep those in mind as we are going to be considering, hopefully this fall, a rule for that groundwater management zone. We also discussed the Aquifer Conservancy Program. It does have pros and cons both. And another thing, I had a report from Colorado where they use conservation easements to help conserve groundwater. Ms. Martin's looking into the legality of something like that would work in Texas if it holds up with our rules. We've also been talking about waste rules. We have updated our definition of what waste consists of, and we talked about using incentives instead of looking for enforcements to encourage people, end users, in other words, to reduce their water loss. We discussed the TNRCC wastewater permit request from Corix, which they are recommending for approval. We also had a request from Region G to consider using the MAG peak factor, which the Management Committee does not recommend. Let's see, and I believe that was it. Yes, and we will be meeting again after we hear back from the Finance Committee on the mitigation bill. And that's it.
Any questions from the directors on that? All right, then moving on to agenda item 4F, the General Manager's Report.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. The General Manager's Report for August 16th, 2023. During the reporting period from July 1st through July 31st, 2023, 9 new exempt domestic wells were registered through the district's Form 1 drilling application. No pre-existing wells were registered during that same period. District staff conducted 3 water quality tests and engaged 20 wells. We made a unfortunate jump in drought conditions from where we were at last time we met, going from mostly abnormally dry in the 2 counties back in June to we are now currently in severe drought across all of Bastrop County and about 80% of Lee County, with the remaining 20% of Lee County being in moderate drought. So we jumped from D0, D1 to D3 across, or I'm sorry, D2 across the majority of the district in that span of that month. The Groundwater Management Area 12 has not met since the last board meeting. However, there have been some meetings with the GMA 12 consultants trying to refine the ideas and some of the questions that the GMA tasked them with evaluating at the last meeting. So hopefully we'll get that feedback from them and help kind of refine how we're going to process and move forward in the next cycle. Herb has already spoken to the renovations at the office. We did get the HVAC issue resolved. Everything seems to be moving forward now. So as Elvis mentioned, we should be maybe ready at the end of next month to start making that transition. We have reposted the education and outreach coordinator position. Previously, it was posted on a fixed timeline that closed on the 14th of August. We received no responses. It's been reposted as a open until filled, and it's with a initial review date of applications beginning on the 28th of August. So far, we have gotten 1 response in, so 100% improvement over the last posting. Hopefully, we'll get a few more options that we can evaluate before we move on, but we are starting to get some responses. I worked with TAG and their administrative assistant. She has some education and outdoors Facebook groups that she's part of that she posted our ad for us. So that got us a lot more exposure. Hopefully that'll bring us some more dividends there. The second stakeholder meeting for the Rules Advisory Group is scheduled for the 24th. We had been trying to do those every Wednesday, the Wednesday after the board meetings. There were some schedule conflicts. So it got bumped to the 24th, which unfortunately is the same day as GMA 12. So we've got that sorted out, but Dr. Bill Hutchison from the our consulting hydrologist will be at the stakeholder group to make presentations about regarding the production limits that the district has adopted. I believe we're also bringing in the general manager from Gonzales County Underground Water Conservation District to talk about their 3-dimensional management system that, well, they seem to understand it, but I've never been able to get a finger on it. But that'll help present some other options and some other management approaches that the stakeholders can consider. So hopefully that'll give some good conversations for them. We do have the pending permits still for Manville and Aqua, and yeah, as much as I would have liked to have done them, as we discussed in September, in terms of timing and scheduling, October is looking most likely to get those 2 finally in front of the board and finish that out. That'll be the last of the 2 permits that came in prior to the rule changes. Although I would like to point out that there may be a scheduling conflict with Dr. Hutchison for the normal October 3rd Wednesday. So we may want to have a discussion at the management level about if we want to shift that. He said the week before or the week after are both good. It's just that particular day is not necessarily going to work for him. So we can have that discussion, and if we need to move the October date, we can do that. With regard to upcoming meetings, GMA 12 is scheduled for August 24th, 10 a.m., Post Oak Savannah's office in Milano. It'll also be available online. Region K is scheduled for October 4th, 10 a.m. at the LCRA Center in Austin. I have not seen a new posting for the next Region G meeting. They met at the end of July, so I doubt they'll meet again before October. So hopefully I'll have that date to catch all of you up next time we meet in September.
What time is the meeting in Giddings on the 24th?
10:30. Yes, sir. We're using the public library. They don't open until 10. So 30 minutes to get the room set up, and then the meeting will go from there.
All right, thank you.
Jim, with the stakeholders committee, there was a note that they recognized that several stakeholder groups were missing from the committee. like recreation and Lee County government? Is there any effort then to try and plug those holes?
We had spoken with Lee County government, but they were aware of it. We haven't gotten it. We haven't gotten anything from them on filling that spot. Recreation was not a group that we had originally considered for incorporation in this stakeholder group. We focused on permit holders, environmental interests, private property rights. Recreation and groundwater is not something that popped up front of mind. So I don't think that's one group that's going to be added at this point. But we are looking to get the city of Giddings and a representative of Lee County government. City of Giddings city manager is already committed. He just couldn't make the meeting. He should be at the next one, and then we're still waiting to get that Lee County government rep.
What about an environmental, you said environmental, but what about like a wildlife venture that,
Kind of a broad environmental group.
Parks and Wildlife.
We have
Parks and
EDF.
wildlife?
Don't we have
Parks and Wildlife.
Don't we have EDF?
Yeah, Parks and
We have
Wildlife.
EDF and environmental stewardship are the two main.
Environmental stewardship and Environmental Defense Fund are their two representation for that category.
And honestly, Parks and Wildlife didn't come up, and that's kind of interesting that they didn't. But
I would think they might be a good party to have, but I don't know.
I had them on my stakeholder group, and that was a really important consideration when you start factoring in recreation associated with surface groundwater connections. And
yeah, I'll mention it to Todd and see if we can get a late addition.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Totten.
Thank you, sir.
Hydrogeologist report, Mr. Alan Standen. Good evening.
Good evening, board members. I'll be brief. Vince presented the main thing I wanted to present today, but I just want to remind you that you just saw part of the data that you're getting. So that was just the oil and gas geophysical logs. You have 1,500 Texas Water Development Board wells and probably 3,500 TDLR wells. Since we have screen intervals, we have production information. I have to compile the Texas Water Development historical database for water levels and water chemistry. So all that will go into that model. But right now I'm in a visual. So the problem, I'll just point out, there's so much data, and we're going to provide the product to you in quadrants like we presented, but we'll also provide it by county and then as the district. So when you want to be able to look at a particular area with this, you will be able to do it because it's too big. It's going to be too big to look at. I just want to point out that we've built a lot on besides what Vince has showed, and that's just building the framework. Then once we get there, we can really identify where these wells are and what wells are being impacted by what pumping is going on. So I just wanted to build on what he presented. I said this last time on slide, but I'm just reiterating it. So. You got questions? Yes.
Well, for me, I'm not as familiar with Lee County as I am with Bastrop. So when you had a presentation like that, if you had the map where it's kind of so I could sort of see the towns and where's Lexington and where is Lincoln and where, and then I would kind of know what all that. I'm just
we
not.
would have provided a handout. And
Okay.
That was a printer
Yeah, I guess
issue,
so.
and I think
Okay.
We would address the
Okay.
printer issue, I hope.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Mr. Sherrill, do you have a question or? Okay, 'cause it should be on. They all should be on.
That man back there couldn't hear him speaking.
Yeah. They're not very strong. The microphone systems in general in this room is not very strong, I guess. Okay, next item is item H, discussion of Lost Pines Groundwater Conservation District legislation, related legislation and/or activities occurring that affect or pertain to the district and groundwater. I do not have anything on this item. We already had Greg Ellis discuss that, so unless anybody has anything, we'll just move on. All right, seeing nothing on there, we'll just move on to the next one. Consideration of future agenda items. The only one that I know of is we're probably going to have a future agenda item next month on the grant, because the grant due date is the 17th, which is like right before the October board meeting. So I believe in September, if we're going to have to vote on anything regarding the grant, it's going to have to probably be at the next September board meeting. We probably need to vote on the amount, the split, whether it's 50-50 or 75-25, whatever. I would imagine that would be a vote. So I expect that in September we'll have some discussion and vote on regarding the grant, just because the deadline is too close to the October board meeting.
We may have to do just a general come up with a number, come up with some specifics, and then make a general authorization to allow the grant to be submitted without further board input. That may be the approach we need to take.
Okay. Yep. Question?
Jim, are you still after our friend on the Texas Water Development Board to have the Springs presentation?
I'm going to check in with
It looks
him.
like November might be a less crowded time.
It's all about when he lives in Marfa,
Right.
so it really comes down to when he's going to be in Central Texas.
Okay.
So we'll figure it out.
Okay.
But yes, ma'am. He's on my calendar for the 1st of September to
Reach out?
to try and calendar.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, and I've got that on my list, and that's the Texas Water Development Board
Springs Initiative.
Springs Initiative.
And Elvis, we'll have a gatehouse item unless we have a special meeting.
That's right. Okay. So it looks like we'll have a gatehouse item at the next board meeting. Anything else for future agenda? All right, seeing none. Discussion, consideration, and possible action on district board meeting calendar, item 4J on the agenda. The only one, I'd just like to state again that the Thomas Turfgrass hearing is on September 20th, 6 p.m. in Elgin. As I initially stated at the last board meeting, I apologize for that committee meeting notes that were with the incorrect date. Anything else for a future calendar? I just have so Thomas Turfgrass is the only one I have to announce on the 20th of September. Set and date and location, it's September 20th in Elgin. Right after the public hearing for Thomas Turfgrass, we'll have the board hearing immediately after the Thomas Turfgrass hearing. The Thomas Turfgrass hearing will start at 6. The board hearing will be immediately thereafter at the conclusion. So again, that will be in Elgin on September 20th. With that, anything else? Anybody else? All right, seeing none, then we will adjourn tonight's meeting at 8:45 p.m. Thank you.